The billionaire CEO who had no clue he was a dad until she showed up when a guarded billionaire CEO opens his penthouse door to find a wide-eyed little girl clutching a faded photograph and a woman from his past standing behind her. His perfectly controlled world shatters with 5 words: "She's your daughter, mister." Before we go into details, click subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comments section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse office like 1,000 desperate fingers seeking entrance. Alexander Pierce stood motionless before the glass, his reflection a sharp silhouette against the glittering tapestry of Manhattan's skyline. At 34, he'd built an empire that most men couldn't achieve in 3 lifetimes. Pierce Industries wasn't just a company. It was a behemoth, a titan of technology and innovation that had revolutionized 3 different industries in the span of a decade. His phone buzzed for the 17th time in the past hour. Alexander didn't need to look at it to know it was another board member, another investor, another journalist seeking a piece of his time, his wisdom, his attention. Time was the only commodity Alexander Pierce truly valued, and he guarded it more jealously than the billions sitting in his accounts. "Mr. Pierce, the Jakarta investors are waiting in conference room A," his assistant Marcus announced through the intercom, his voice carefully neutral. Marcus had learned long ago that Alexander appreciated efficiency over enthusiasm. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes," Alexander replied, his voice carrying that particular quality of absolute certainty that made people believe he could bend reality to his will. Perhaps he could. He'd certainly bent everything else. He turned from the window, catching his full reflection in the glass. Tall, lean, with dark hair that was perpetually slightly disheveled despite the best efforts of Manhattan's most expensive stylists. His eyes were gray, storm gray, one magazine had called them, and they held a coldness that made competitors nervous and employees careful. He wore his custom Tom Ford suit like armor, because that's exactly what it was. Alexander Pierce had built his empire on 3 principles: control, precision, and emotional detachment. Emotions were liabilities. Emotions made you weak. He'd learned that lesson the hard way, and he'd learned it well. The Jakarta meeting went exactly as he'd predicted. 2 hours of careful negotiation, subtle intimidation, and strategic silence that left the investors practically begging to accept his terms. By the time he returned to his office, he'd secured a $300 million deal that would expand Pierce Industries' reach into Southeast Asian markets. "Drink, sir." Marcus appeared at his elbow with the timing of a well-trained butler. "Scotch." "Neat." Alexander loosened his tie slightly, the only concession to the day's exhaustion he'd allow himself, and pull up the quarterly projections for the biotech division. "Something in those numbers isn't adding up." "Already on your desk, sir." I also took the liberty of highlighting the discrepancies in the 3rd quarter projections. Alexander allowed himself the ghost of a smile. "This is why you're invaluable, Marcus." "I'm well aware, sir." Marcus set the crystal glass on the desk with barely a sound. "Will there be anything else?" "No. Go home. It's past 8. With respect, sir, you should do the same." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you tell me what to do?" "Since I've worked for you for 7 years and watched you sleep in this office more nights than in your actual penthouse." Marcus's voice remained professional, but there was a hint of genuine concern beneath it. "Even machines need maintenance, Mr. Pierce." "Noted. Good night, Marcus." After Marcus left, Alexander settled into his leather chair and pulled up the biotech reports. But his mind, usually so laser-focused, kept drifting. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean and glittering. Somewhere out there, 8 million people were living their lives, falling in love, breaking hearts, raising families, making memories. Alexander had none of that. He had money. He had power. He had respect and fear and admiration from people who didn't really know him, because no one really knew him. That was the point. His phone lit up with a text from his mother. "Darling, are you coming to the charity gala next week? The Hendersons are bringing their daughter." She's lovely. A doctor, I believe. Alexander deleted the message without responding. His mother had been trying to set him up with appropriate women since he'd made his first million. Daughters of senators, heiresses, models, actresses, doctors, lawyers, an endless parade of perfectly suitable candidates for the role of Mrs. Pierce. He'd dated some of them, slept with fewer, felt anything genuine for none. Well, almost none. The thought came unbidden, unwanted, and Alexander immediately pushed it away. He didn't think about her, hadn't thought about her in years. That was ancient history, a chapter of his life he'd closed, locked, and thrown away the key. Some chapters were meant to stay closed. He threw himself back into the reports, losing himself in numbers and projections and strategic planning. This was his meditation, his church, his comfort. Here, in the cold logic of business and profit, everything made sense. Everything was controllable. By the time he finally left the office, it was past midnight. The lobby was empty except for the night security guard who nodded respectfully as Alexander passed. His driver was waiting. Of course, Marcus would have called ahead. "Home, Mr. Pierce?" Robert asked, holding open the door of the black Mercedes. Alexander paused. Home. The penthouse apartment with its pristine white walls and designer furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. The space he occupied but never truly inhabited. Yes, Robert. Home. The drive through late-night Manhattan was quiet. Alexander watched the city slide past his window, couples stumbling out of restaurants, groups of friends laughing on street corners, the occasional homeless person huddled in a doorway. All of them living lives he couldn't fathom, pursuing happiness he couldn't understand. His penthouse was exactly as he'd left it that morning. Perfect, cold, empty. Alexander poured himself another scotch and stood by the window, looking out at a city that never slept. He was on top of the world, king of his domain, master of his fate. Why did he feel so hollow? The question annoyed him. Introspection was another luxury he didn't allow himself. He finished his drink, took a hot shower, and went to bed in his perfectly made bed in his perfectly appointed bedroom. Sleep came slowly, as it always did. And when it came, it brought dreams he'd rather not have. Dreams of warm brown eyes and soft laughter. Dreams of a time when he'd been happy without even realizing it. Dreams of her. He woke at 5:30 a.m., as he always did, with those dreams already fading like morning mist. By the time he was dressed and heading back to the office, he'd pushed them away entirely. The past was the past. It couldn't hurt you if you didn't let it. Alexander Pierce had spent 10 years believing that he was about to discover just how wrong he could be. Emma Matthews stood in the lobby of Pierce Tower and tried not to vomit. It wasn't the morning sickness that had finally subsided around month 4, thank God. It was pure, undiluted terror. The kind of fear that made your hands shake and your breath come short and your entire body scream at you to run, 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 but she couldn't run. Not this time. Not anymore. She looked down at the hand holding hers. Small fingers, soft skin, sticky from the juice box Emma had given her in the car. Lily looked up at her with those eyes, those storm gray eyes that were so heartbreakingly familiar, and smiled. "Is this where Daddy works?" Lily asked, her 5-year-old voice carrying in the cavernous lobby that Emma's heart clenched. "Yes, sweetheart. This is where he works. It's really tall." Lily craned her neck back, trying to see the top of the atrium. "Does he live in the clouds?" Despite everything, Emma smiled. "Sometimes it feels like it." A security guard approached them, his expression professionally neutral. "Can I help you? I need to see Alexander Pierce." Emma was proud that her voice only shook slightly. "I don't have an appointment, but it's urgent. Personal." The guard's expression shifted to barely concealed amusement. Emma knew what he was thinking. Another woman claiming to have urgent personal business with one of the city's most eligible bachelors. How many did they turn away every week? "Mr. Pierce doesn't take unscheduled meetings," the guard said, not unkindly. "If you'd like to schedule an appointment through proper channels, please." Emma heard the desperation in her own voice and hated it. "Just tell him Emma is here. Emma Matthews. He'll know who I am." The guard looked skeptical, but something in Emma's face must have convinced him. "Wait here." He walked away, speaking into his radio. Emma felt Lily tug on her hand. "Mommy, you're hurting me." Emma immediately loosened her grip. "I'm sorry, baby. Mommy's just a little nervous." "Why are you nervous? How did you explain to a 5-year-old that you were about to turn her father's entire world upside down? That you were about to tell a man who valued control above all else that he had a daughter he never knew existed? That you'd kept this secret for 5.5 years, and now circumstances had forced your hand?" "I'm nervous because this is a really important conversation," Emma said carefully. "But it's going to be okay. I promise." She hoped that wasn't a lie. The guard returned, looking surprised. "Mr. Pierce's assistant will be down to escort you up in a moment. He asked me to seat you in the private waiting area." Emma felt her knees go weak with relief and terror in equal measure. He'd agreed to see her. She didn't know if that was good or bad. Marcus appeared 5 minutes later, immaculately dressed and professionally cordial. But Emma saw the way his eyes flickered to Lily, the way they widened just slightly before his expression smoothed back to neutrality. He saw it. Anyone who knew Alexander would see it immediately. Lily was his twin in miniature. "Ms. Matthews," Marcus said smoothly, "please follow me." The elevator ride to the top floor felt like ascending to judgment. Lily chattered away, oblivious to the tension, talking about the sparkly floors and asking if all buildings had moving rooms. Emma tried to respond appropriately, but her mind was racing. What was she going to say? "How did you start this conversation?" "Hi, Alexander. Remember me? Remember that summer 6 years ago?" "Well, funny story." The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that looked like it cost more than Emma's entire house. Marcus led them past the empty reception desk and down a hallway lined with awards and magazine covers featuring Alexander's face. "Mr. Pierce is just finishing a call," Marcus said, gesturing to a leather couch outside an imposing set of double doors. "He'll be with you in a moment. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? Juice for the young lady?" "We're fine. Thank you." Emma managed. Marcus nodded and retreated, but Emma noticed he didn't go far. He positioned himself at the reception desk with a clear view of them, his expression carefully blank. "Mommy, I have to go potty," Lily announced out of course. Of course she did. Right now, at this moment. "Can you hold it just a few more minutes, sweetie?" Emma asked, even though she knew the answer. "No, I really have to go right now." Emma looked around desperately. Marcus appeared at her elbow, as if summoned by magic. "The restroom is just down this hall," he said, pointing. "Second door on the left." "Thank you." Emma stood, taking Lily's hand. "We'll be right back." In the bathroom, Emma took the opportunity to splash cold water on her face while Lily did her business. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. She looked tired, scared. Older than her 30 years. 6 years ago, she'd been different. Bright-eyed, ambitious, full of dreams about her career as a photojournalist. She'd been on assignment, covering a tech conference in San Francisco when she'd met him, Alexander Pierce, already a rising star in the tech world at 28. He'd been giving a keynote speech, and Emma had been assigned to photograph it. She'd expected another boring tech bro, all ego and buzzwords. Instead, she'd found him fascinating, intense, brilliant. And when he'd sought her out after the speech, when he'd asked her to have dinner with him, she'd said yes without hesitation. That dinner had turned into 2 weeks that changed her life. 2 weeks of conversation that lasted until dawn. Of exploring the city together. Of him showing her a side of himself that Emma suspected few people ever saw. The Alexander beneath the CEO, the man beneath the armor, that of falling in love so fast and so hard that it terrified her. And then of him leaving. Because of course he did. He had an empire to run, and she had a career to build. They'd promised to stay in touch. He'd even seemed to mean it, but the calls had become less frequent. The texts had slowed, and Emma had realized that for Alexander, those 2 weeks had been an aberration, a brief holiday from his real life. For her, they'd been everything. And then she discovered she was pregnant. She tried to tell him. God, she'd tried. But his assistant had become a wall of professional courtesy. Her messages had gone unreturned. And Emma had finally understood that she'd been nothing but a pleasant distraction for a man who didn't do relationships, who didn't do emotions, who didn't do anything that wasn't about building his empire, so she'd made a choice. She'd have the baby. She'd raise her alone. She'd build a good life for them, just the two of them. And she had. It hadn't been easy. Single motherhood while freelancing never was, but she'd managed. She and Lily had a tiny house in Brooklyn. Emma worked from home when she could, took assignments when she couldn't. Her parents helped when they were able. They were okay. They were fine. Until 3 months ago, when Lily had gotten sick. Mommy. Lily's voice snapped Emma back to the present. I'm done. Okay, baby. Let's wash hands. They returned to find Marcus still at his post. He gestured toward the double doors. Mr. Pierce will see you now. This was it. No more running. No more hiding. No more pretending that Alexander Pierce wasn't Lily's father. Emma took a deep breath, squeezed Lily's hand, and walked through those doors into Alexander Pierce's office, and into a conversation that would change all of their lives forever. Alexander Pierce was standing at his window when they entered, his back to the door, his posture rigid. Emma had a moment to study him before he turned. He looked almost exactly as she remembered, tall, lean, commanding, but there were new lines around his eyes, a hardness to his jaw that hadn't been there before. Emma. He turned, and those storm gray eyes met hers. For a moment, Emma forgot how to breathe. 6 years fell away in an instant. She was 24 again, standing in that hotel lobby in San Francisco, watching this man walk toward her like he'd been searching for her his entire life. But then his gaze dropped to Lily, and everything changed. Emma watched the emotions flicker across Alexander's face in rapid succession. Confusion, shock, denial, and then a dawning understanding that made his face go pale. He stared at Lily, and Lily stared back with those eyes that were exactly like his, and the silence stretched between them like a living thing. Mr. Pierce, Emma started, her voice barely above a whisper. I know who she is. Alexander's voice was rough, scraped raw. He hadn't taken his eyes off Lily. She has my eyes. She has more than that, Emma said softly. Alexander finally looked at her, and the expression on his face was so complex, so full of emotions he clearly didn't know how to process, that Emma's heart ached for him. How old is she? 5. She turned 5 last month. Emma watched him do the math, watched him realize that Lily had been conceived during those 2 weeks in San Francisco. Watched him understand exactly what this meant. What? The single word was heavy with accusation, confusion, hurt. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. Emma fought to keep her voice steady, to not let the old hurt resurface. I called. I texted. I emailed. Your assistant said you were unavailable, that you'd call back. You never did. I would have, if I'd known. Alexander dragged a hand through his hair, destroying its careful styling. Jesus, Emma. A child. My child. 5 years. Excuse me. A small voice interrupted. Lily was looking up at Alexander with open curiosity. Are you my daddy? The question seemed to hit Alexander like a physical blow. He actually took a step back, his hand gripping the edge of his desk, as if he needed the support. He started, then stopped. Emma had never seen Alexander Pierce at a loss for words. She'd never seen him look so completely undone. Emma knelt beside Lily, bringing herself to her daughter's eye level. Yes, sweetheart. This is your daddy. Why doesn't he live with us? Children, Emma thought, had a gift for cutting through all the complexity and asking the questions that mattered. Why doesn't he live with us? Such a simple question. Such an impossibly complicated answer. Because. Emma looked up at Alexander helplessly. Because sometimes mommies and daddies live in different places. But I thought you said my daddy didn't know about me. Lily persisted with the relentless logic of a 5-year-old. How can he live somewhere else if he didn't know I existed? Lily's sweetheart, why don't you sit on this nice couch and play with your tablet for a few minutes while mommy talks to your daddy? Emma pulled out the tablet. Thank God for technology that could occupy a child while her world was falling apart, and settled Lily on the leather couch with her headphones. Once she was engrossed in her educational game, Emma turned back to Alexander. He was still staring at Lily, his expression shell-shocked. We need to talk, Emma said quietly. Yes. Alexander seemed to shake himself, forcing his attention back to Emma. Yes, we do. But first, he moved to his desk and pressed the intercom. Marcus, cancel everything for the rest of the day. Everything. I don't care if the president calls. I'm unavailable. Yes, sir. Marcus's voice came through, carefully neutral, though Emma suspected he knew exactly what was happening. Alexander turned back to Emma, and some of his composure seemed to have returned. But beneath it, Emma could see the turbulence, the storm of emotions he was fighting to contain. You tried to contact me, he said. It wasn't a question, but Emma nodded anyway. When I found out I was pregnant, about 2 months after San Francisco, and my assistant said that you were unavailable, that you'd call back. I tried for 3 weeks, Alexander. 3 weeks of phone calls and emails and messages. And then, Emma wrapped her arms around herself, remembering that particular brand of heartbreak. And then I realized you weren't going to call back. That whatever we'd had in San Francisco, it was over for you. And I had to decide what to do. So you decided to keep it from me. The anger was starting to show now, breaking through the shock. For 5 years. No. Emma's own anger flared. I decided to raise my daughter. Our daughter. Alone. Because you made it very clear that you didn't want to be contacted. That you'd moved on. What was I supposed to do, Alexander? Show up at your office pregnant and demand. What? Money? Acknowledgement? A relationship you obviously didn't want. You should have tried harder. Alexander's voice rose, and on the couch, Lily looked up, concerned. He immediately lowered his voice, but the intensity remained. You should have found a way to tell me. You should have. I was 24 years old. Emma interrupted, her voice shaking. 24, pregnant, alone, and scared. I did the best I could with what I had. Don't you dare stand there in your $1,000 suit in your tower in the sky and judge me for making the choices I had to make. They glared at each other across the expanse of his office, years of hurt and anger and unspoken feelings crackling between them like electricity. You're right, Alexander said finally, and the admission seemed to cost him. You're right. I'm sorry. This is just, he gestured helplessly. This is a lot to process. I know. Believe me, I know. Emma softened slightly. I didn't come here to fight with you, Alexander. I didn't come here to disrupt your life or ask for anything. Then why did you come? Why now, after 5 years? This was it. The moment Emma had been dreading. She glanced at Lily, still absorbed in her game, blissfully unaware of the storm about to break. Because I need your help, Emma said quietly. Because Lily needs your help. And I hate that I have to ask, but I don't have a choice anymore. Alexander's expression shifted immediately from anger to concern. What's wrong? Is she sick? 3 months ago, Lily started getting tired all the time, bruising easily. We thought it was just normal childhood stuff, but then she started complaining of bone pain. I took her to the doctor, and they ran some tests. Emma's voice started to break, but she forced herself to continue. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Oh, it's a cancer of the blood and bone marrow. The color drained from Alexander's face. Cancer, he repeated, the words seeming to echo in the vast office. She has cancer. The good news is that it's very treatable. The survival rate for childhood all is over 90% with the right treatment. But the treatment is intensive. Chemotherapy, possible radiation, and… Emma took a deep breath. And she might need a bone marrow transplant. I'm not a match. Neither are my parents. We need to find a donor, and biological relatives are the best chance. Understanding dawned in Alexander's eyes. You need me to get tested? Yes. And… Emma hesitated. And I need help with the medical bills. My insurance is covering a lot, but there are experimental treatments that might help, specialists that aren't covered, and I'm already drowning in debt. I've sold everything I can sell. I've maxed out every credit card. I've borrowed from everyone I know. But it's not enough. It's never enough. She hated how her voice broke on that last sentence. Hated how vulnerable she sounded. Hated that she had to come here and ask this man for help after he'd made it so clear he didn't want her in his life. But she'd do anything for Lily, including this. Of course, Alexander said immediately. Of course I'll get tested. And the medical bills, give me the information. All of it. I'll take care of it. Today, Alexander, I'm not asking for, she's my daughter. Alexander's voice was fierce. My daughter has cancer, and you think I'm going to quibble about money? Give me the information. I want her seeing the best doctors, getting the best treatment. I don't care what it costs. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. This is— Alexander stopped, his jaw working. She's my daughter. Of course I'll help. I just wish you'd told me sooner. I know. I'm sorry. I should have tried harder to reach you. I should have. We can't change the past. Alexander's voice was heavy with regret. We can only move forward. When does she need to start treatment? She's already in treatment. She started chemotherapy 6 weeks ago. It's why her hair is so short. She lost most of it, and we decided to cut the rest so it would be less traumatic. The doctors are optimistic, but they want to have a bone marrow donor lined up just in case. Alexander nodded, already pulling out his phone. I'll call my doctor now. I want to be tested today, and I want the contact information for her oncologist. I need to understand her prognosis, her treatment plan, everything. Emma rattled off the information while Alexander typed rapidly into his phone. She watched him transform from the shocked, emotional man of a few minutes ago into the focused, commanding CEO who had built an empire. This was Alexander in his element, identifying a problem and marshaling resources to solve it. But this wasn't a business problem. This was a little girl's life. His little girl. I should also tell you, Emma said quietly, that the doctors want to start preparing for the possibility of a transplant within the next few months. If you're a match, you need to be available for the procedure. I'll make myself available. Whatever she needs. Alexander looked over at Lily, his expression softening. Can I? Would she let me talk to her? Emma glanced at her daughter, who had taken off her headphones and was watching them with interest. You can try, but Alexander, she's 5. She doesn't understand all of this. And she's been through a lot these past few months. Just be gentle. I don't know how to talk to children, Alexander admitted, a flash of vulnerability crossing his face. Just be yourself. Well, the yourself I met in San Francisco, not the CEO version. Something flickered in Alexander's eyes at that. That man hasn't existed for a long time. Maybe it's time to find him again. Alexander walked slowly toward the couch where Lily sat. Emma watched as he knelt down, bringing himself to her level, just as Emma had done earlier. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. The same eyes, the same shape of the face, even the same way of tilting their heads when curious. Hi, Alexander said, his voice softer than Emma had ever heard it. I'm your dad. I know this is probably confusing. Lily studied him with that intense 5-year-old stare. You look like me, she observed. I do. I guess that makes sense, since you're my daughter. Mommy says you didn't know about me. No, I didn't. But I wish I had. I would have wanted to know you. I want to know you now, if that's okay. Lily considered this. Okay. Do you like dinosaurs? The question clearly caught Alexander off guard. I don't know. I've never really thought about it. I love dinosaurs. My favorite is the Ankylosaurus. It has armor and a club tail. What's your favorite? Emma watched as Alexander, billionaire CEO, feared businessman, master of his universe, was interrogated about dinosaurs by a 5-year-old with cancer. And slowly, incredibly, she watched him smile. I think the Ankylosaurus sounds pretty cool. Can you tell me more about it? And just like that, Lily launched into an enthusiastic explanation of dinosaur taxonomy, defensive adaptations, and the theoretical uses of club tails. Alexander listened with the same intensity he probably brought to board meetings, nodding seriously and asking questions that showed he was actually paying attention. Emma felt her heart crack open. This was what she'd robbed both of them of. 5 years of dinosaur conversations and bedtime stories and first steps and first words. 5 years of Alexander being a father and Lily knowing her dad. She'd done what she thought was right. She'd done what she'd had to do. But watching them together now, she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. Finally, Lily wound down, her energy flagging. It was a reminder of why they were here. She tired easily these days, the cancer and the treatment sapping her usual boundless 5-year-old energy. I think someone's getting sleepy, Emma said gently. I'm not tired, Lily protested, even as she yawned. Why don't we go home and rest? Emma suggested. We can come back and visit your daddy another time. You're leaving? Alexander stood, and Emma saw something like panic cross his face. But we need to. There's so much to. She needs to rest. And we both need time to process all this. Emma moved to gather Lily and their things. I'll send you all the medical information. You can get tested, and then we'll figure out the rest. Emma. Alexander caught her arm gently. I want to be involved. Not just with the medical stuff. With everything. With her. I've missed 5 years. I don't want to miss any more. Emma looked up at him and saw sincerity in those storm-gray eyes. But she also saw the fear beneath it. The fear of a man who had carefully controlled every aspect of his life suddenly faced with the ultimate loss of control that came with being a parent. This isn't a business deal, Alexander, she said quietly. You can't schedule her into your calendar between board meetings. Being a parent is messy and exhausting, and it takes over your entire life. I know that. Or at least, I'm starting to understand it. Alexander's grip on her arm tightened slightly, a silent plea. Let me try? Please. Let me try to be her father. Emma wanted to say no. Wanted to protect Lily from the disappointment that would come when Alexander realized that fatherhood wasn't something you could master with focus and determination. That it required things he'd spent a decade learning not to feel. But Lily deserved a father. And Alexander deserved the chance to be one. Okay, Emma said finally. We'll take it slow. One step at a time. But Alexander, if you're going to be in her life, you have to be all in. You can't decide in a month that it's too complicated or it doesn't fit into your 5-year plan. She's already going through hell with the cancer. She doesn't need the uncertainty of a father who might disappear. I won't disappear, Alexander said firmly. I promise. Emma hoped that was a promise he could keep. She gathered Lily, who was too tired now to protest, and headed for the door. Marcus appeared to escort them down, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes warm with understanding as he entered the elevator. Emma turned back to see Alexander still standing in the doorway of his office, watching them leave. He looked lost, overwhelmed, terrified that he looked human. Maybe, Emma thought as the elevator doors closed. There was hope for him after all. Alexander Pierce's world had ended and begun again in the span of 20 minutes. After Emma and Lily left, he stood in his office, his kingdom, his fortress, his carefully controlled domain, and felt the walls close in around him. Everything he'd built, everything he'd worked for, every barrier he'd constructed between himself and the messy, complicated reality of human emotion had just crumbled to dust. He had a daughter, and she had cancer. Alexander moved to his desk on legs that didn't feel quite steady and sat down heavily. His hands were shaking. Alexander Pierce's hands never shook, but they were shaking now. Sir, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression concerned. Are you all right? No. The word came out harsh, honest. No, I'm not all right. Cancel everything for the rest of the week. Reschedule the board meeting. Tell the Tokyo office I'll video conference instead of flying out. I need. Alexander stopped, dragged a hand through his hair. I need time. Of course, sir. Marcus hesitated. If I may, the little girl. She's mine. She's mine. Alexander looked up at his assistant, his right-hand man for 7 years, and saw understanding in his eyes. I have a daughter, Marcus. A 5-year-old daughter I didn't know existed. And she's sick. She has leukemia, and she might die. And I didn't even know she existed until 20 minutes ago. Marcus's professional composure cracked slightly. Sir, I'm so sorry. Give me the name of the best oncologist in the country. No, in the world. I don't care where they are or what they're doing. I want her seeing the best. And I need to be tested for bone marrow compatibility. Today. Right now. Call my doctor. Tell him it's an emergency. I'll take care of it immediately. And Marcus? Alexander called as his assistant turned to leave. Thank you. He gestured helplessly. For everything. Marcus nodded and disappeared, already on his phone. Alone again, Alexander opened his laptop. Emma had sent him the medical records, the treatment plans, the mounting bills. He began to read, and with each page, the reality of what Lily had been going through, what Emma had been going through, hit him harder. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Intensive chemotherapy protocol. Potential for bone marrow transplant. Side effects including nausea, fatigue, increased infection risk, potential organ damage, long-term effects unknown. His daughter, was enduring all of this. Had been enduring it for weeks while he sat in his tower, oblivious, worried about quarterly projections and market share. The medical bills made him flinch, and he was a man for whom numbers usually meant nothing on a personal level. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this was with insurance. Emma had been trying to handle this alone, drowning in debt while Alexander pulled up his banking information and began transferring money. He paid off every medical bill, every outstanding balance. He set up a trust fund for Lily's ongoing care, fully funded. He arranged for a payment to Emma's mortgage company. He'd looked up her address, had seen the tiny house in Brooklyn where his daughter lived. Money. The one thing he had in abundance. The only thing he knew how to give, but it wasn't enough. Lily didn't need his money. Well, she did, for the medical care. But she needed more than that. She needed a father. Alexander Pierce had no idea how to be a father. His phone buzzed. His mother again. "Darling, you missed the charity gala. The Hendersons were asking about you. Please call me." Alexander stared at the message. His mother. His family. They didn't know about Lily. No one knew about Lily except Emma, Marcus, and now him that he should tell them. He should tell everyone. This was his daughter. But the thought of announcing to the world that he had a 5-year-old daughter he'd known nothing about filled him with a dread he couldn't quite name. The media would have a field day. The tabloids would crucify Emma. And Lily, innocent, dinosaur-loving Lily, would be thrust into a spotlight she didn't deserve. He'd tell his family first. Then they'd figure out the rest together. His doctor called back within the hour. "Alexander," Marcus said, "it's urgent." "What's going on?" "I need to be tested for bone marrow compatibility. Today. Now." Bone marrow for whom? Alexander hesitated for only a moment. "My daughter. She has leukemia." There was a long pause. Dr. Chun had been Alexander's physician for 6 years. He knew, as much as anyone did, about Alexander's personal life. "I didn't know you had a daughter." "Neither did I. Until today. Can you do the test?" "I'll have a nurse at your office within the hour." "Alexander, are you?" "I'm fine. Just send the nurse." He wasn't fine. He was the furthest thing from fine. But Alexander Pierce had built his entire life on appearing in control, and he couldn't let that facade crack. Not now. Not when so much was at stake. The nurse arrived exactly an hour later. The bone marrow compatibility test was simple, just a blood draw and some cheek swabs. Results would take a few days. A few days of waiting, wondering if he could save his daughter's life. His daughter. The words still didn't feel real. After the nurse left, Alexander did something he hadn't done in years. He left the office at 4 p.m. He told Marcus he'd be unreachable for the rest of the day. And he went home to his cold, empty penthouse. Once there, he poured himself a scotch he didn't drink and pulled out his laptop. He started searching everything about childhood leukemia, about treatment protocols, about survival rates and complications and long-term effects. He read medical journals and parent blogs and survivor stories until his eyes burned and his head ached. And then, because he was a glutton for punishment, he did what he'd forbidden himself from doing for 6 years. He looked up Emma Matthews. She was still freelancing as a photojournalist, though her recent work was sparse. Most of her recent online presence was related to Lily, birthday parties, trips to the park, fundraising efforts for childhood cancer research. Emma's Instagram was private, but her professional page showed glimpses of the life they'd built together. There was a photo from Lily's 4th birthday party, Emma laughing as Lily smashed cake into her face. Another of them at the beach, building sandcastles. One of Lily dressed as a dinosaur for Halloween, her grin missing 2 front teeth. 5 years of moments Alexander had missed. 5 years of birthdays and holidays and ordinary days that he could never get back. And then he found the recent photos. Lily in a hospital bed, bald, smiling bravely despite the 4 in her arm. Emma looking exhausted, aged beyond her years, but still managing to smile for the camera. A video of Lily talking about her cancer treatment with the matter-of-fact courage of a child who didn't yet understand how serious it all was. "The medicine makes me feel yucky," Lily said in the video, "but Mommy says it's fighting the bad cells. I'm very brave. The doctors say so." Alexander watched the video 3 times, then closed his laptop before he could watch it a fourth. His chest felt tight. His eyes burned. He realized, with some shock, that he was crying. Alexander Pierce didn't cry. Hadn't cried since he was a teenager, since he'd learned that emotions were weaknesses to be controlled and contained. But he was crying now. For the daughter he'd never known. For the time he'd lost. For the little girl fighting cancer with more courage than he'd ever possessed. For Emma, drowning in debt and fear, trying to save their daughter alone. He cried until he had nothing left, then sat in his expensive penthouse surrounded by his expensive things and felt more alone than he'd ever felt in his life. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Emma. Just wanted to let you know Lily asked about you before bed. She wants to know if you like T-Rex dinosaurs too. I said you'd tell her next time." Alexander stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "I love T-Rex dinosaurs. Tell her she can teach me all about them. And Emma, thank you. For today. For telling me. For everything." The response came quickly. "She's your daughter too. You have a right to know her." Alexander typed and deleted several responses before finally settling on, "Can I see her again tomorrow? She has a treatment session tomorrow morning, but we're free in the afternoon. You could come by the house if you want. Warning, it's nothing like your penthouse. I don't care about that. Send me the address." "What time?" 3 p.m. "I'll be there." Alexander set down his phone and looked around his penthouse, his symbol of success, his monument to everything he'd achieved. And for the first time in his life, he wondered if he'd been chasing the wrong things all along. The house in Brooklyn was exactly what Alexander had expected: tiny, in need of repairs, with a postage stamp yard and paint peeling off the shutters. It was the kind of house that a struggling single mother could barely afford, that sucked up money and maintenance while never quite losing that worn, tired look. It was also clearly filled with love. Alexander could see it in the flower boxes in the windows, lovingly planted and tended. In the cheerful yellow door with its welcome mat shaped like a dinosaur. In the chalk drawings on the sidewalk, stick figures labeled Emmy and Mommy and Grandma. He sat in his Mercedes for a full minute before getting out, suddenly nervous in a way he'd never been before a billion-dollar negotiation. This was different. This mattered in a way that money never had. Before he could knock, the door flew open and Lily stood there, wearing pajamas covered in pterodactyls despite it being the middle of the afternoon. "You came," she exclaimed, then immediately followed up with, "Do you really like T-Rex dinosaurs, or were you just saying that?" Alexander couldn't help but smile. "I really do. I especially like that they had tiny arms but were still the most fearsome predators of their time. Sometimes being different is an advantage." Lily's eyes widened with approval. "Mommy, he knows about the tiny arms." Emma appeared behind Lily, looking tired but managing a smile. "Come in. Sorry about the mess. We weren't expecting. Well, we were expecting you, but..." She stopped, seeming flustered. "Just come in." The house was small but clean, clearly decorated on a tight budget, but with care and creativity. Children's art covered the refrigerator. Books overflowed from shelves. A telescope stood in one corner. Alexander remembered Emma's love of astronomy. "How was treatment today?" Alexander asked, his throat tight at the thought of what Lily had endured that morning. "It was okay," Lily said with a shrug that was far too casual for a child discussing chemotherapy. "I threw up twice, but that's better than last week. I threw up 4 times last week." Alexander felt like he'd been punched. She was discussing vomiting from chemotherapy the way other kids might discuss their favorite TV shows. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said quietly. "It's okay. Mommy says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the hard thing even when you're scared. I'm very brave." "Yes," Alexander agreed, his voice rough. "You are the bravest person I've ever met. Braver than Mommy. Just as brave as Mommy." Emma's eyes met his over Lily's head, and Alexander saw the exhaustion there, the fear she was hiding from her daughter, the weight of everything she'd been carrying alone. He wanted to gather them both in his arms, to promise that everything would be okay, that he'd fix this, but he couldn't promise that. This wasn't something money or power could fix. This was life and death, and all he could do was stand beside them and hope. "Want to see my dinosaur collection?" Lily asked. "It's in my room." I'd love to. Lily's room was tiny, barely big enough for a twin bed and a small dresser. But every available surface was covered with plastic dinosaurs, dinosaur books, dinosaur posters. A night light in the shape of a triceratops cast a soft glow even in the afternoon light. "This is my favorite," Lily said, holding up a well-worn ankylosaurus figure. "His name is Clunky because of his club tail. What should we name this one?" She held up a T-Rex. "What about Rex?" Alexander suggested, then immediately felt stupid. Of course Rex was the obvious name for a T-Rex, but Lily nodded seriously. "Rex is a good name. Very dignified." For the next hour, Alexander sat on the floor of his daughter's bedroom and learned everything there was to know about dinosaurs. He learned that velociraptors were much smaller than Jurassic Park suggested, that the Stegosaurus's brain was the size of a walnut, that some dinosaurs may have had feathers. He learned that Lily wanted to be a paleontologist when she grew up, that she was scared of the dark but wouldn't admit it, which was why she had the nightlight, that her favorite color was purple, and her favorite food was macaroni and cheese, and she was teaching herself to read because she wanted to read the big dinosaur books by herself. He learned that his daughter was brilliant, funny, brave, and more alive than anyone he'd ever met, despite the cancer trying to steal that life away. Eventually, Lily began to fade, her energy depleting. Emma appeared in the doorway. "Time for rest, sweetheart," she said gently. "But we're playing," Lily protested, though her eyes were already drooping. "Your daddy can come back tomorrow," Emma promised. "Right?" She looked at Alexander, and he nodded immediately. "Absolutely. And we can play dinosaurs again." "Promise." "I promise." Lily climbed into bed, and Alexander stood awkwardly, unsure of the protocol. But Lily held out her arms, and instinct took over. He leaned down and hugged her. This small person who was half of him, who he'd only just met, but who already felt essential to his existence. "I'm glad you're my daddy," Lily whispered into his shoulder. Alexander's throat closed up entirely. He managed to whisper back, "I'm glad too." Emma tucked Lily in, kissed her forehead, and gestured for Alexander to follow her out. They left the door cracked and moved to the small kitchen. "Coffee," Emma offered. "Or I have tea. Or water. I don't have much else." "Coffee is fine." Alexander watched her move around the tiny kitchen with practiced efficiency. "Emma, I transferred money yesterday. For the medical bills, and I know." "I saw." Emma's hands stilled on the coffee pot. "Alexander, that was too much. The medical bills are one thing, but you paid off my mortgage. You set up a trust fund. She's my daughter." Alexander's voice was firm. "I've missed 5 years of supporting her. Let me do this. It's not about money. I know it's not. But it's what I can give right now. Please, let me give this." Emma studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, thank you. You have no idea how much pressure that takes off. I'm sorry you had to carry that pressure alone." "Alexander." Emma poured the coffee, set a mug in front of him. "We need to talk about what happens next. About how this is going to work. I want to be part of her life. Part of both your lives." Alexander wrapped his hands around the mug, needing something to hold on to. "I know I don't have a right to ask for that after. You have every right. You're her father." Emma sat across from him. "But you need to understand what that means. Being Lily's father isn't going to fit neatly into your schedule. It's not a business deal you can manage from your office. It's messy and unpredictable, and it will take over your life." "I understand that." "Do you?" Because the Alexander the first knew 6 years ago was already consumed by his work. And from what I've read, you've only gotten more successful, more busy, more unavailable. The words stung because they were true. "I've changed," Alexander said, then stopped. "No, that's not true. I haven't changed. But I want to. For her. I need to." Emma's expression softened slightly. "She needs consistency, Alexander. She needs someone who will be there, not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard. When she's sick and scared and needs you at 3 a.m. Can you be that person?" "I don't know," Alexander admitted. "I've never been that person for anyone. But I want to try. Will you let me try?" Emma looked at him for a long moment, and Alexander saw the war playing out in her eyes. The desire to protect Lily from disappointment versus the recognition that every child deserved a father. "Okay," she said finally. But we start slow. You come by when you can. You video chat when you can't. You build a relationship with her. And if at any point this becomes too much for you, if you decide you can't do this, you tell me before you disappear. You don't just stop showing up. Deal? Deal. Alexander hesitated. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why didn't you hate me? When you couldn't reach me, when you realized you were going to have to do this alone, why didn't you hate me? Emma smiled sadly. Who says I didn't? I was furious with you for a long time. But then Lily was born, and she had your eyes, and I realized that hating you was pointless. You didn't know? And even if you had known, maybe you weren't ready. Maybe we weren't right for each other. All I could do was focus on being the best mother I could be. You're an amazing mother, Alexander said quietly. The way you've handled all of this, the way you've protected her and cared for her. I'm a terrified mother who's been making it up as I go along. Emma interrupted. Some days I barely hold it together. When they told me she had cancer, I went home and cried for 3 hours. Then I pulled myself together and researched everything I could find about all. That's all parenting is, Alexander. Being terrified and doing it anyway. That's what Lily said. About being brave. Emma smiled. She's smarter than both of us. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, drinking coffee in Emma's tiny kitchen while their daughter slept down the hall. It felt surreal, domestic and strange, and right all at once. I should go, Alexander said finally. Let you rest. But I'll be back tomorrow. If that's okay. It's okay. She'll be happy to see you. At the door, Alexander paused. Emma, thank you for giving me this chance. I know I don't deserve it. Everyone deserves a chance to be better, Emma said softly. Don't make me regret giving you one. Alexander drove back to Manhattan with his mind racing. He had a daughter who loved dinosaurs and was braver than he'd ever been. A daughter who was fighting for her life. He'd spent 10 years building an empire, and in one day, a 5-year-old girl had reminded him what actually mattered, that it was time to reprioritize. Over the next 2 weeks, Alexander Pierce's life transformed in ways he never could have imagined. He cleared his schedule ruthlessly. The board meeting that couldn't possibly be rescheduled? Rescheduled. The Tokyo trip that was absolutely essential? Delegated. The investor dinner that would make or break the quarter? Postponed. Marcus nearly had a heart attack the first time Alexander told him to cancel an entire day's worth of meetings. Sir, the investors from Singapore have flown in specifically, then wine and dine them. Give them the tour. Tell them I have a family emergency. A family emergency. Marcus's tone was carefully neutral. I have a daughter, Marcus, and she has cancer. That's more important than investors from Singapore or anywhere else. Marcus had simply nodded and made the arrangements. If the business world was shocked by Alexander Pierce's sudden unavailability, they kept it to themselves. When you were that powerful, that successful, people made allowances. Alexander spent every afternoon at the Brooklyn house. He learned Lily's routine, treatment on Mondays and Thursdays, checkups on Wednesdays, rest days in between. He learned that she liked her toast cut into triangles, not squares. That she always needed 3 bedtime stories, no more, no less. That she got scared during thunderstorms and needed someone to hold her hand. He learned to be a father, that it wasn't easy. The first time Lily got sick after treatment and Alexander had to hold her hair while she threw up, he nearly lost it himself. The first time she cried from the pain, begging for it to stop, he felt more helpless than he'd ever felt in his life. But Emma was there, showing him how to be strong for Lily even when they were breaking inside. Teaching him that love meant showing up, especially when it was hard. The test results came back on day 4. Alexander was a match. Not perfect, but close enough that he could be a donor if Lily needed a transplant. He'd cried when he got the news, tears of relief that he could help save his daughter's life. He also started seeing a therapist. It was Emma's suggestion, made gently one evening after Lily had gone to bed. You're doing great, she'd said. But I can see how much you're holding in. All those walls you've built up over the years, they're not going to come down overnight. And Lily needs you to be emotionally available, not just physically present. Alexander had bristled at first. Therapy was for people who couldn't handle their problems. He'd spent a decade learning to control his emotions, and now he was supposed to unlearn it all, but he'd made a promise. He'd promised to try. So he found a therapist who specialized in emotional availability and started the difficult work of tearing down walls he'd spent years constructing. His mother found out about Lily in week 2, when she showed up at his penthouse unannounced and found him video chatting with a small child who called him Daddy. Alexander James Pierce, Catherine Pierce had said, her voice arctic. You have 30 seconds to explain why I'm learning about my granddaughter from a video chat. The conversation that followed was difficult. Catherine was hurt that he hadn't told her immediately. She was concerned about the media implications. She was worried about Alexander's judgment, Emma's intentions, whether this child was even really his. She's mine, mother, Alexander had said flatly. One look at her, and there's no question. And if you say one more word doubting Emma's integrity, you'll be meeting your granddaughter via video chat only. Catherine had backed down, as people generally did when Alexander used that tone. But the hurt in her eyes had stayed with him. He was hurting everyone with his secrets, even when he was trying to do the right thing. That she'd met Lily the next day, and any reservations she'd had melted away the moment Lily showed her the dinosaur collection. Catherine Pierce, society matriarch and formidable businesswoman, had spent 2 hours sitting on the floor learning about the late Cretaceous period. She's extraordinary, Catherine had told Alexander later, tears in her eyes. And that poor child, what she's going through. Alexander, anything you need, any resources, any help. I know, Mom. Thank you. It was the most genuine conversation he'd had with his mother in years. The rest of his family came next. His father, initially skeptical until he met Lily and immediately offered to set up college funds and trust funds and every kind of fund imaginable. His sister, who cried and asked why Alexander hadn't told her she had a niece. His brother, who was just excited to have another kid in the family to spoil. They all fell in love with Lily immediately. It was impossible not to. But while Alexander's family embraced the situation, the media remained blessedly unaware. They'd been careful. No public outings, no social media posts, nothing that would alert the tabloids that Alexander Pierce had a secret daughter. It couldn't last forever, Alexander knew. Eventually, someone would notice. Someone would talk. The story would break. But for now, they had this bubble of privacy. This time to be a family without the world watching. One evening in the 3rd week, after Lily had gone to bed, Emma and Alexander sat on her tiny back porch with glasses of wine. Cheap wine, because that's what Emma could afford, though Alexander had offered 1,000 times to upgrade everything. You're getting good at this, Emma said, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. At what? Being a dad. Being present. I wasn't sure you could do it, but you're proving me wrong. I'm terrified every single day, Alexander admitted. Terrified I'll do something wrong, say something wrong, let her down somehow. That's parenthood. The terror never goes away. Emma smiled. But you're handling it well. She loves you, you know. Really loves you. She talks about you constantly. Alexander felt his throat tighten. I love her too. I didn't know I could love anything this much. It's overwhelming. Overwhelming, Alexander agreed. Everything I built, everything I accomplished, none of it matters compared to her. None of it. Be careful, Emma warned gently. Don't swing too far the other way. Your work matters too. Finding balance is important. How do you balance it? The fear, the love, the need to be everything for her. I don't. I just do my best and hope it's enough. Emma took a sip of wine. Alexander, can I ask you something? Anything. What happened to you? 6 years ago, you were intense, but you were also warm. Open. And then you just shut down. I tried to reach you, and it was like talking to a wall. What changed? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the small yard, wrestling with whether to answer honestly. But Emma had been nothing but honest with him. She deserved the same. My father, he said finally. My biological father, not the man who raised me. He died when I was 16. Heart attack, completely unexpected. And I fell apart. Completely, utterly fell apart. Couldn't function, couldn't cope, just broke. He'd never told anyone this. Not his therapist, not his family, not anyone. My stepfather, the man I call Dad now, he sat me down and told me that emotions were a luxury successful men couldn't afford. That the world would eat me alive if I let feelings control me. That I needed to be harder, colder, more controlled. So I learned. I locked everything away. It worked. I built an empire. But I also became untouchable, Emma finished softly. Untouchable, Alexander agreed. And those 2 weeks with you in San Francisco, I let my guard down. I was myself, the self I'd buried. And it was amazing. But then I went back to my real life, and I panicked. What if I got soft? What if I lost my edge? So I did what I always did. I shut down, locked it all away again. I didn't ignore your calls because I didn't care. I ignored them because I cared too much, and that terrified me. Oh, Alexander. Emma's voice was full of compassion. You know that's not how it works, right? Being human doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. I'm starting to understand that. Lily is teaching me that. Alexander turned to look at Emma. Really look at her. You both are. Something shifted in the air between them, a charge of awareness that had been building for weeks. Emma was beautiful in the fading light, her hair pulled back, her face free of makeup, exhausted but radiant in the way of mothers who loved fiercely. Emma, Alexander started, not sure what he was going to say, but Emma held up a hand. Don't. Whatever you're about to say, don't. We're in a good place right now. We're co-parenting successfully. We're building a family for Lily. Let's not complicate it. What if I want to complicate it? Then wait. Wait until Lily is healthy. Wait until we're both thinking clearly and not running on adrenaline and fear and hope. Wait until we're sure. Emma's voice was gentle but firm. I won't risk what we're building for Lily. Not for anything. Not even for whatever this is between us. She was right. Alexander knew she was right. But that didn't make it any easier. You're wise, he said instead. I'm practical. And I've been burned before. Emma stood, stretched. It's late. You should head home. Alexander stood too, but hesitated at the door. Emma, thank you. For letting me in. For giving me this chance. You're her father, Emma interrupted. You don't have to thank me for letting you be her father. But as Alexander drove back to Manhattan that night, he reflected that yes, he did need to thank her. Because Emma could have kept Lily from him out of spite or hurt or fear. Instead, she'd put her daughter first. Emma Matthews was a better person than he'd ever been. But maybe, just maybe, he was learning to be better too. The story broke on a Tuesday. One morning Alexander had been expecting it eventually. But that didn't make it any less devastating when his phone exploded with notifications at 6 a.m. Billionaire CEO's secret love child, Alexander Pierce's hidden daughter. The story he doesn't want you to know, mystery woman reveals Pierce's 5-year-old secret the tabloids had found out. Somehow, someone had talked, and now the entire world knew about Lily. Alexander's first call was to Emma. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with tears. Have you seen? I've seen, Alexander said grimly. Don't look at any more of it. Don't read the comments. I'm sending a car for you and Lily right now. I'm getting you out of there. Alexander, there are photographers outside my house. On my lawn. They're shouting questions through the windows. Rage, white-hot and pure, flooded through Alexander. Stay inside. Lock all the doors. I'm calling the police and my security team. No one touches you or Lily. Do you understand? No one. Within 20 minutes, Alexander had mobilized a small army. His personal security team surrounded Emma's house, pushing back the photographers. Police arrived to enforce privacy laws. A car service pulled up to take Emma and Lily to Alexander's penthouse, which had security that even the most aggressive paparazzo couldn't breach. Alexander was waiting when they arrived, and the sight of them broke his heart. Emma looked shell-shocked, barely holding it together. And Lily, innocent Lily who was already fighting cancer, looked scared and confused. Why were all those people taking pictures? Lily asked, clinging to Emma's hand. Why were they yelling at us? Because some people forgot their manners, Alexander said, kneeling down to her level. But you're safe now. No one can bother you here. He'd converted one of his spare bedrooms into a child's paradise over the past few weeks, not to Emma's knowledge, but preparing for moments like this. Dinosaur bedding, shelves full of books and toys, a reading nook by the window. Lily's eyes went wide when she saw it. Is this for me? It's yours, Alexander confirmed. Anytime you need it, this is your room. Emma shot him a look that said they'd be talking about this later, but she was too tired to argue now. After settling Lily in with her tablet and some juice, they retreated to Alexander's living room. "I'm sorry," Alexander said immediately. "I'm so sorry. I should have controlled this better." "I should have? How were you supposed to control it?" Emma asked wearily. "Someone was always going to find out. I knew this was coming. I just hoped we'd have more time." Alexander pulled out his phone and showed her the headlines, the stories that were already circulating. Most were relatively tame, focusing on the secret daughter angle. But some were cruel, speculating about Emma's motives, calling her a gold digger, suggesting she'd trapped Alexander. "They're calling me a liar," Emma said, her voice hollow. "They're saying I'm making it up for money, that I probably don't even know who Lily's father is." "I'll have my lawyers issue a statement immediately," Alexander said, "confirming that Lily is mine, that you've been nothing but honorable, that anyone who suggests otherwise will face legal action." "That won't stop them." "No, but it will make them think twice about printing lies." Alexander moved closer to her on the couch. "Emma, I'm going to protect you. Both of you. Whatever it takes." Emma looked at him, and Alexander saw the fear in her eyes. Not fear of the media, though that was there too. Fear of what this meant for Lily. "She has cancer, Alexander. She's 5 years old and fighting cancer, and now she's going to be hounded by photographers everywhere she goes. How is she supposed to handle this on top of everything else? We'll get through it. Together." Alexander took Emma's hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "You're not alone anymore. You have me. You have my family. You have resources and security and lawyers. We'll protect her. I just want her to be normal, to have a normal childhood, to play and laugh and not worry about cameras or cancer or—" Emma's voice broke, and suddenly she was crying, really crying, all the stress and fear and exhaustion of the past months finally breaking through. Alexander pulled her into his arms without thinking, and Emma collapsed against his chest, sobbing. He held her while she cried, stroking her hair, murmuring nonsense words of comfort. This was Emma's breakdown, the one she'd been holding off for so long because she had to be strong for Lily. "I'm so tired," she whispered against his chest. "I'm so tired of being strong. So tired of being scared. So tired of pretending everything is okay when nothing is okay." "Then don't pretend. Not here. Not with me." Alexander tightened his arms around her. "You've been strong for so long. Let me be strong for you now." They stayed like that for a long time, Emma crying out months of fear while Alexander held her. And in that moment, Alexander realized something profound. This was what he'd been missing. Not just success or power or control, but connection, vulnerability, the messy, complicated reality of actually caring about people. Eventually, Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Sorry, that wasn't professional. We're not business partners, Emma. We're—" Alexander stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. What were they? Co-parents? Friends? Something more? "We're complicated," Emma finished for him, managing a weak smile. "Complicated," Alexander agreed. "But maybe complicated is okay." They ordered food, pizza, because that's what Lily wanted, and spent the day in the penthouse while Alexander's team dealt with the media circus outside. His PR department issued statements. His lawyers sent cease and desist letters to the worst offenders. His security team swept Emma's house for any privacy breaches. By evening, the initial frenzy had died down slightly, though Alexander knew it would take weeks for the story to fade from the headlines. "What do we tell Lily?" Emma asked as they watched their daughter play with her dinosaurs in her new room. "How do we explain this?" "We tell her the truth. That people are interested because I'm her father and I'm in the news sometimes. That it doesn't change anything important. That we love her and will keep her safe." "When did you become so wise about parenting?" "I'm not. I'm making it up as I go along, just like you." Alexander smiled. "But I figure if we love her enough and try our best, maybe that's enough." "Maybe," Emma agreed softly. That night, after Lily was asleep in her new room, Emma and Alexander sat on his balcony looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The same view that had seemed so empty a few weeks ago now felt different with Emma beside him. "I should probably go home tomorrow," Emma said. "We can't hide here forever." "Why not?" Alexander countered. "There's plenty of space. This place is too big for just me anyway. And with Lily's treatment schedule, It might make sense for you to be closer to the best hospitals, which are all in Manhattan. Alexander, are you asking us to move in with you? I'm asking you to consider it. Purely practical reasons, he added quickly. Better security, closer to treatment centers, more space for Lily, separate bedrooms, completely appropriate co-parenting situation. Emma looked at him skeptically. Purely practical. Purely practical, Alexander repeated, but they both knew it wasn't quite true. Let me think about it, Emma said finally. It's a lot to process. The media attention, the living situation, all of it. Take all the time you need. The offer stands. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Alexander marveled at how much had changed in just a few weeks. He'd gone from a man who worked 16-hour days and slept in his office to someone who knew the words to every Moana song and could identify 20 different types of dinosaurs. Alexander, Emma's voice was quiet. Thank you. For today. For handling everything. For being here. Always, Alexander said, and meant it. I'll always be here. For both of you. It was a promise he intended to keep. No matter what came next. 3 weeks after the media storm, Alexander's life had settled into a new normal. Emma and Lily had officially moved into the penthouse. Emma, in the 3 weeks after the media storm, Alexander's life had settled into a new normal. Emma and Lily had officially moved into the penthouse. Emma in the second guest suite, Lily in her dinosaur paradise of a room. The media attention had died down to manageable levels, helped by Alexander's lawyers and a well-timed donation to childhood cancer research that redirected the narrative that Lily's treatment was progressing. The chemotherapy was working, her cancer markers were decreasing, and her oncologist was cautiously optimistic. Alexander had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd get through this. Then everything fell apart. It started with a fever. Alexander woke at 2 a.m. to Emma shaking his shoulder, her face pale with fear in the dim light from the hallway. Alexander, Lily has a fever. 102 degrees. We need to go to the hospital. Now. Alexander was out of bed instantly, already reaching for clothes. He knew from all his research that fever in a cancer patient undergoing chemotherapy was an emergency. The chemo destroyed Lily's immune system, making even minor infections potentially fatal. They were in the car within 5 minutes, Lily wrapped in blankets in Emma's arms, confused and whimpering. Alexander drove with a controlled urgency that had his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. It's going to be okay, he kept saying, to Emma, to Lily, to himself. It's going to be okay. But when they arrived at the ER and the doctors examined Lily, Alexander saw the concern on their faces. They admitted her immediately, started her on broad-spectrum antibiotics, drew blood for cultures. We need to identify the infection source quickly, Dr. Patel, Lily's oncologist, explained. With her compromised immune system, infections can escalate rapidly. They set up camp in Lily's hospital room. Emma in the chair by the bed, Alexander standing guard like a sentinel. Lily drifted in and out of consciousness, the fever making her delirious. Daddy, she called out in her sleep. Daddy, where are you? I'm here, sweetheart. Alexander moved to the bed, taking her small hand in his. Daddy's here. I'm not going anywhere. Don't leave me, Lily whispered, her eyes unfocused. Please don't leave me. Never. I'll never leave you. Alexander's voice broke on the words. The hours crawled by. The fever climbed to 103, then 104. The doctors added more antibiotics, more medications. Lily's small body fought against the infection ravaging her weakened system. Emma sat frozen in her chair, watching her daughter with eyes that had seen too much fear. Alexander wanted to comfort her, but he was drowning in his own terror. This was his worst nightmare, watching his daughter fight for her life and being completely powerless to help. Why isn't it working? Emma asked Dr. Patel when he came to check on Lily for the 4th time that night. The antibiotics should be working by now. We're still waiting for the culture results to identify exactly what we're dealing with, Dr. Patel explained gently. Once we know the specific bacteria, we can target it more effectively. The broad-spectrum antibiotics should be helping, but some infections are more resistant than others. And if they don't work? Alexander heard himself ask the doctor. Patel's expression was grave. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're doing everything we can." It wasn't an answer. It was a deflection. Alexander recognized it because he'd used similar tactics in business negotiations when the news was bad, but he couldn't say it directly. His daughter might die. The thought crashed over him with the weight of a collapsing building. She might die, and all his money, all his power, all his resources meant nothing. He couldn't buy her life. He couldn't negotiate with cancer. He couldn't control this. "I need air," Alexander said abruptly, stumbling toward the door. "Alexander," Emma started, but he was already gone, walking blindly down the hospital corridor until he found a deserted waiting room. Then he fell apart. Alexander Pierce, billionaire CEO, master of his universe, man of steel control, collapsed into a chair and sobbed. Harsh, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep inside, from a place he'd locked away years ago. That he cried for his daughter, so small and brave and sick. He cried for Emma, who'd been carrying this burden alone for months before he even knew. He cried for all the time he'd wasted, all the years he'd spent building an empire that meant nothing compared to one 5-year-old girl. "Mr. Pierce," Alexander looked up to find Marcus standing in the doorway, looking uncomfortable and concerned in equal measure. "I got your text about the hospital," Marcus said quietly. "I came as soon as I could. I brought coffee and, sir, are you all right?" "No." Alexander wiped his face roughly. "No, I'm not all right. My daughter is dying, Marcus, and I can't do anything to stop it." Marcus crossed the room and did something Alexander never expected. He sat down beside him and put a hand on his shoulder. "She's not dying. Not if she's anything like her father. You're the most stubborn man I've ever met. You don't give up on anything. She won't either. What if stubbornness isn't enough? Then you'll deal with it. But not yet. Right now, you need to be strong for her. For Emma. They need you." Alexander took a shaky breath, then another. Marcus was right. He couldn't fall apart. Not now. Not when his family needed him. His family. When had he started thinking of them that way? "Thank you, Marcus, for coming. For," Alexander gestured vaguely, "for everything over the years." "You're welcome, sir. Now drink this coffee and go back to your daughter." By the time Alexander returned to Lily's room, her fever had climbed to 104.5. The nurses were bringing ice packs, cool cloths, anything to bring down the temperature. Emma sat on the bed now, holding Lily against her chest, tears streaming silently down her face. Alexander moved to the other side of the bed and wrapped his arms around both of them. They stayed like that, the three of them, while Lily burned with fever and fought for her life. "I love you," Alexander whispered to Lily. "I love you so much. Please fight. Please stay with us." "Daddy," Lily murmured, barely conscious. "Sing the dinosaur song." Alexander didn't know any dinosaur songs, but he made one up on the spot, something silly about ankylosaurs and their club tails, about T-Rexes with tiny arms, about Triceratops and their 3 horns. His voice cracked and broke, but he kept singing while Emma hummed along, both of them trying to reach their daughter through the fog of fever and illness at 4 a.m. The fever finally broke. It happened suddenly. One moment Lily was burning up, the next her temperature started to drop. 104 degrees. 103, 102. Down and down until it settled at a still elevated but less terrifying 100 degrees. Dr. Patel came in at 5 a.m. with news. "We identified the infection. It's a bacteria called Pseudomonas. Aggressive, but we can target it now with specific antibiotics. The fever breaking is a good sign. It means her body is fighting back. Is she going to be okay?" Emma's voice was hoarse from crying. "I'm optimistic. The next 24 hours are critical, but if she continues to improve, she should make a full recovery from this infection." Dr. Patel paused. "However, this is a complication we need to take seriously. Her immune system is severely compromised. We may need to consider alternative treatment approaches, including accelerating the timeline for a bone marrow transplant." Alexander felt Emma stiffen beside him. The transplant. They'd known it was a possibility, but hearing it discussed as an immediate necessity made it real. "Whatever she needs," Alexander said firmly. "Whatever gives her the best chance. Let's get through this crisis first," Dr. Patel said. "But start preparing yourselves for that possibility." After the doctor left, Emma and Alexander sat in exhausted silence, watching Lily sleep. The crisis had passed, but the war wasn't over. It might never be over. I've been thinking, Emma said quietly, not taking her eyes off Lily. About what would happen if the worst happens. Emma, don't. No, we need to talk about this. We need to be realistic. Emma's voice was steady, but tears rolled down her cheeks. If something happens to me, if I can't be here for her, I need to know she'll have you. Really have you. Not just financially, but emotionally. I need to know you won't retreat back into your walls. That you'll stay present for her. Nothing is going to happen to you, Alexander said fiercely. But if it does, promise me, Alexander. Promise me you'll be the father she needs. The father you're learning to be. Alexander looked at this woman. This incredible, strong, brave woman who'd raised his daughter alone, who faced down cancer and media storms and his own emotional unavailability with grace and determination. And he made the most important promise of his life. I promise. I'll be there for her. Always. No matter what. He took Emma's hand. But you need to promise me something too. Promise me you won't give up. That you'll let me help you carry this burden. That you won't try to be strong all the time. Lean on me, Emma. Please. I don't know how, Emma admitted. I've been doing this alone for so long. Then learn with me. We'll figure it out together. They sat together as dawn broke over Manhattan, their hands joined, watching over their daughter. The city woke up around them, millions of people starting their days, going about their lives, unaware that in this hospital room, a family was being forged through fire. Lily woke up around 8 a.m., her fever down to 99 degrees, looking weak but alert. Did I miss breakfast? She asked, her voice small but unmistakably Lily. Alexander and Emma both laughed, the sound somewhere between relief and hysteria. We'll get you breakfast, sweetheart, Emma promised. Whatever you want. Dinosaur-shaped pancakes. I'll make them myself, Alexander promised. Even though he'd never made pancakes in his life. He'd learn. He'd learn anything for her. The rest of the day passed in a blur of medical checks and cautious optimism. Lily's infection responded to the targeted antibiotics. Her fever stayed down. She even ate some of the store-bought, not homemade, dinosaur pancakes that Alexander had Marcus procure from somewhere. By evening, Dr. Patel declared her stable enough that Emma could take a break. Go home, shower, sleep for a few hours, Alexander urged. I'll stay with her. If anything changes, I'll call you immediately. Emma hesitated, clearly torn between exhaustion and maternal instinct. I'll take care of her, Alexander promised. Trust me. Finally, Emma nodded. Okay, but call me if she even sneezes wrong. I will. After Emma left, Alexander settled into the chair beside Lily's bed. She was awake, watching him with those storm-gray eyes that were so like his own. Daddy? She asked quietly. Yes, sweetheart. Am I going to die? The question hit Alexander like a physical blow. How did you answer that? How did you comfort a 5-year-old asking about her own mortality? No, he said firmly, moving to sit on the edge of her bed. No, you're not going to die. You're going to get better. The medicine is working. You're strong, just like your mom. Just like me. We're fighters. But I got really sick. I heard the doctors talking. They sounded worried. They were worried because they love you and want you to get better. Just like me and Mommy. But you fought back, and now you're winning. Lily considered this. Like how the ankylosaurs use their club tails to fight. Exactly like that. You're using your club tail to fight the bad cells. I wish I had a real club tail. That would be cool. Alexander laughed. Something he wouldn't have thought possible a few hours ago. It would be very cool. But impractical for sitting in chairs. That's true. Lily yawned, her energy already fading. Daddy, will you stay here? I don't want to be alone. I'm not going anywhere, Alexander promised, echoing his words from earlier. I'll be right here when you wake up. Promise? I promise. Lily's eyes drifted closed, and within minutes, she was asleep. Alexander watched her breathe, each rise and fall of her small chest a miracle. His phone buzzed with urgent messages, board members needing decisions, investors demanding his attention, a crisis in the Tokyo office that required immediate resolution. Alexander turned his phone off. None of it mattered. Not compared to this. Not compared to the small girl sleeping in the hospital bed, fighting for her life with more courage than he'd ever possessed. He'd spent 10 years building an empire, and it had taken a 5-year-old to show him what was truly valuable. That night, sitting vigil over his daughter, Alexander Pierce finally understood what it meant to be fully human. To love so deeply that it hurt. To be vulnerable and terrified and present all at once. And he wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. The weeks following Lily's infection were a turning point for all of them. Lily recovered slowly but steadily, her small body proving more resilient than anyone expected. The oncology team decided to move forward with the bone marrow transplant, using Alexander as the donor. The procedure was scheduled for 6 weeks out, giving Lily time to regain strength and Alexander time to prepare. In those 6 weeks, Alexander's transformation completed, he restructured his entire company, delegating major responsibilities to trusted lieutenants, creating a new position of president to handle day-to-day operations. He'd remain CEO and chairman, but his focus shifted from building an empire to maintaining one while actually living his life. His board was initially resistant. Several members expressed concern about his distraction. Alexander had invited them to find a new CEO if they weren't satisfied with his priorities. None of them did. Because even with reduced hours, Alexander Pierce was still more effective than most CEOs working twice as hard. He'd just learned to be efficient with his time instead of drowning in it. He attended every one of Lily's medical appointments. He learned to do her 4 flushes when she had her port accessed. He held her hand during the painful procedures and celebrated with her on the good days. He read her bedtime stories every single night, becoming an expert on dinosaurs, space, and every Disney princess movie ever made. He also fell deeper in love with Emma. It happened gradually, then all at once. The way she hummed while making breakfast. The sound of her laugh when Lily said something unexpectedly hilarious. The fierce determination in her eyes when advocating for their daughter's care. The vulnerability she finally allowed herself to show, letting him see her fears and doubts and exhaustion. They hadn't talked about what was happening between them. They were too focused on Lily, too careful not to complicate things. But it was there, in the lingering glances, the casual touches that lasted too long. The way they moved around each other in the kitchen like they'd been doing it for years. One evening, about a week before the transplant, Alexander found Emma on the balcony after Lily had gone to bed. She was staring out at the city, wrapped in one of his hoodies because the early autumn air had turned cool. "She's excited about the transplant," Emma said without turning around. "She thinks it's going to give her superpowers. Daddy sells making her extra strong." Alexander smiled. "That's basically what I told her." "I know. I heard." Emma turned to face him, and in the city lights, her eyes were luminous. "She worships you, you know. You're her hero." "She's mine," Alexander said quietly. "Both of you are." Something shifted in Emma's expression. "Alexander, I know we said we'd wait, that we wouldn't complicate things." Alexander moved closer. "But Emma, I'm in love with you. I've been in love with you since San Francisco. I just was too scared and stupid to admit it. And I know this might not be the right time, and we should probably wait until after the transplant, until Lily is healthy, but I need you to know. I love you. I'm in love with you. And if you don't feel the same way, that's okay. I'll still be here. I'll still be Lily's father. Nothing changes. But I couldn't go another day without telling you." Emma stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she smiled. "You're such an idiot," she said fondly. What? I've been in love with you too. For weeks now. Maybe longer. Maybe since San Francisco. Maybe since the moment you sat on the floor and let our daughter teach you about dinosaurs." Emma closed the distance between them. "But you're right about the timing being terrible. We have the transplant coming up. We have Lily to think about. We can't what?" Alexander cupped her face gently. "Can't be happy? Can't find joy even in the middle of fear? Emma, these past 2 months have been the hardest of my life. But they've also been the best because I get to spend them with you. With both of you. Life doesn't wait for the perfect moment. We have to make our own moments." "When did you become so wise?" "About 5 minutes ago." Alexander smiled. "So what do you say? Can we try this? Really try? See where it goes." Instead of answering, Emma pulled him down and kissed him. It was like San Francisco all over again. That same electricity, that same sense of rightness. But better, because now Alexander understood what he'd been too blind to see then. This was what mattered. This connection, this love, this messy, complicated, beautiful reality of being with someone who saw him completely and loved him anyway. They finally broke apart, both breathless. "We're doing this," Emma said. "We're really doing this. We're really doing this," Alexander confirmed. "No taking over my life with your billionaire ways. No trying to control everything. I promise to only control 75% of things." Alexander, 50%. Final offer. Emma laughed and kissed him again. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Alexander felt complete. They kept their new relationship quiet, not wanting to add more stress to Lily's situation. But Lily, with the uncanny perception of children, figured it out within 2 days. "Are you and mommy boyfriend-girlfriend now?" she asked Alexander one morning over breakfast. Alexander glanced at Emma, who looked equally caught off guard. "Would that be okay with you if we were?" Lily considered this seriously. "Will you still be my daddy?" "Always. No matter what, I'll always be your daddy. And mommy will still be my mommy." "Of course, sweetheart," Emma assured her. "Okay, then it's okay." Lily returned to her cereal, then added thoughtfully, "Does this mean you're going to get married?" "Lily." Emma's face went red. "Would that be so bad?" "Alexander, we've been through a crisis. A major crisis. Sometimes people think they're in love when they're really just bonded by trauma. We need to be sure this is real before we make any big decisions." "I am sure." Alexander moved to stand in front of her. "Emma, I'm not confused. I'm not caught up in the moment. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and go to bed beside you every night. I want to raise Lily together. I want—" He stopped, gathered his courage. "I want to marry you." Emma's eyes went wide. "What? I know it's fast. I know we technically just started dating. But Emma, I wasted 10 years building things that don't matter. I don't want to waste another minute." Alexander pulled a small box from his pocket. "I've been carrying this for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. But there is no perfect moment. There's just now. There's just us. So Emma Matthews, will you marry me?" Emma stared at the ring. A simple solitaire, elegant and understated, exactly her style. Then at Alexander, then back at the ring. "You're serious," she whispered. "Completely serious. I love you. I want to be your husband. I want to be Lily's father, officially and permanently. I want the whole messy, complicated, beautiful life together." Alexander took her hand. "I know I've made mistakes. I know I have a long way to go in learning how to be emotionally available and present. But I promise you, I will spend every day for the rest of my life trying to be the man you both deserve. So please, marry me." Emma looked at him for a long moment, and Alexander saw everything in her eyes: love, fear, hope, uncertainty. Finally, she smiled through tears. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you, you impossible man." Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, pouring everything he felt into it. All the love, all the gratitude, all the wonder that she'd given him this chance, this life, this family. When they finally broke apart, Emma was crying and laughing at the same time. "Lily is going to lose her mind," she said. "Should we tell her now?" "She's asleep. Let her rest. We can tell her in the morning." But Lily appeared in the doorway at that exact moment, grinning from ear to ear. "I knew it. I knew you were going to get married. Were you spying?" Emma demanded. "I had to go potty, and I heard talking." Lily ran over and launched herself at both of them. "Does this mean we're a real family now?" "We've always been a real family," Alexander said, scooping her up. "But yes, this means I get to be your daddy forever and always. Officially. Can I be the flower girl? You can be whatever you want. I want to be a dinosaur. A flower dinosaur." Alexander and Emma looked at each other and laughed. Because of course Lily wanted to be a dinosaur at the wedding. It was so perfectly her. "A flower dinosaur it is," Emma agreed. They stood together in the living room. Alexander, Emma, and Lily, the family that had been forged through crisis and love and sheer stubborn determination to not give up. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Pierce felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The wedding took place 6 months later, in the spring. After Lily had been declared in full remission, it wasn't a society wedding, despite what Alexander's mother had initially pushed. 4. No 500-person guest list, no cathedral ceremony, no reception at the Met. Instead, it was intimate. 50 people who actually mattered, held in the botanical gardens because Lily wanted flowers and Emma loved nature. Lily did indeed walk down the aisle as a flower dinosaur, specifically a triceratops wearing a flower crown and carrying a basket of petals. She took her role very seriously, making sure to distribute the petals evenly while making quiet, raw sounds. Emma was radiant in a simple ivory dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Alexander forgot how to breathe when he saw her walking toward him. They wrote their own vows, and Alexander's voice shook as he spoke them. Emma, 6 months ago I thought I knew what my life was about. I thought success meant building an empire, accumulating wealth, achieving power. Then I met our daughter, and you reminded me what I'd forgotten, that the only thing that truly matters is love. The love we have for each other, the love we share for Lily, the love that brought us here today. You've made me better. You've made me whole. You've given me a family and a purpose and a reason to be fully human. I promise to spend the rest of my life worthy of that gift. I promise to be present, to be vulnerable, to be the husband and father you both deserve. I promise to love you through every challenge, every joy, every ordinary moment. Forever. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Emma's vows were just as moving, talking about second chances and unexpected families and finding love in the least likely places. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Lily cheered louder than anyone. The reception was relaxed and joyful. Good food, dancing, speeches that made everyone laugh and cry. Alexander's father gave a toast about how proud he was of the man Alexander had become. Emma's mother talked about how she'd prayed for someone to love and support her daughter, and how Alexander had exceeded every hope. But the most memorable toast came from Lily herself, who insisted on having her moment with the microphone. I love my mommy and I love my daddy, she announced to the assembled guests. And I'm really glad they got married because now we're together forever. Also, Daddy promised I could get a puppy, so that's exciting too. Alexander leaned over to Emma. I did not promise a puppy. Yes, you did. Last week when she asked if we could get one after the wedding, you said, we'll see, which in kid speak means yes. That's not. Alexander stopped when he saw Emma's grin. You're enjoying this. Immensely. Welcome to parenthood, Mr. Pierce. Your word means everything now. Fine. We'll get a puppy, but a small one. Lily wants a Great Dane. Absolutely not. They got the Great Dane. Her name was Sarah, after Ceratops the Triceratops from Lily's favorite book series. And she was a ridiculous, slobbery addition to their family that Alexander pretended to be annoyed about while sneaking her treats constantly. Life settled into a new rhythm. Alexander had mastered the art of balance, working hard when he was at the office, but leaving it all behind when he came home. He never missed a school event, a due. Thanks for taking your time listening. Please don't forget to like, comments, and subscribe.